The stars looked different from the observation deck of the Earth vessel Pioneer. John Carter stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching as the massive space station grew larger in the viewscreen. After decades of faster-than-light travel development and years of careful exploration, humanity was finally about to meet the Galactic Council. "Nervous?" asked Olivia Wright, stepping up beside him. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat bun, her blue uniform pressed perfectly for the occasion. John nodded slightly. "Wouldn't you be? Everything changes today." The Galactic Council space station hung in space like a gleaming silver flower, its 17 petal-shaped sections representing each member species. Centauri Prime, they called it, neutral ground for interspecies diplomacy, the place where Earth would finally take its rightful place among the stars. "Final approach," announced the pilot over the ship's communication system. "All diplomatic personnel prepare for docking." John and Olivia joined the rest of the Earth delegation in the airlock chamber. They carried sample technologies, cultural artifacts, and carefully prepared speeches. Humanity's best and brightest, selected to represent Earth in this historic moment. "Remember," said John to the group, "we are representing not just our governments, but our entire species. Be respectful, be confident, but most importantly, be human." The airlock hissed open, revealing a long, curved hallway that seemed to be made of some sort of polished stone. Waiting for them was a tall, thin being with pale blue skin and large, dark eyes. "I am Zill, assistant to the council," it said in perfect English. "Please follow me." The Earth delegation walked through hallways that shifted and changed colors as they passed. They saw beings of all shapes and sizes moving about their business, some floating, some crawling, some walking on too many legs. Despite years of preparation, the sheer alienness of it all was overwhelming. Finally, they reached massive doors that slid open silently, revealing the council chamber. 17 raised platforms surrounded a central speaking area. On each platform sat representatives of the council races, each more strange than the last. "The Earth delegation may approach," announced a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. John stepped forward, his heart pounding in his chest. This was the moment humans had dreamed of since they first looked up at the stars. "Honorable representatives of the Galactic Council," he began, his voice steady despite his nerves. "I bring greetings from Earth and all humanity. We come in peace and friendship, eager to join this community of worlds and contribute to the greater good of all intelligent life." The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then a creature that appeared to be made entirely of shifting crystal formation spoke. "The Council acknowledges Earth's request for membership," it said, its voice tinkling like wind chimes. "You may present your case." For the next hour, the Earth delegation presented everything they had prepared. They showed their technological achievements, explained their cultural diversity, and outlined their peaceful intentions. They answered questions about Earth history, governance systems, and scientific understanding. Throughout it all, John noticed something troubling. The council members were not impressed. They exchanged glances that even across species seemed dismissive. Some barely paid attention at all. Finally, a massive being with 6 eyes that never seemed to blink leaned forward from the Vexillarian platform. "Your species is too young," it said bluntly, "too volatile. Your history is stained with violence and self-destruction. You have had nuclear weapons for less than 300 years and have nearly destroyed yourselves twice in that time." Before John could respond, another council member spoke up. This one resembled a giant jellyfish floating in a personal containment field. "Humans have barely left their own solar system," said the Medusan delegate. "They cannot be trusted with council knowledge or territories. Their technological development is impressive for their age, but fundamentally derivative." One by one, each council representative voiced their concerns. Humans were too aggressive, too unpredictable, too young, too divided, too emotional. The list went on and on. John tried to address each criticism with Olivia and the other delegates, providing support, but it soon became clear that the council had already made up their minds. We will now vote on Earth's application, announced the crystal being who seemed to be leading the session. John watched in growing dismay as each representative voted. The decision was unanimous. All 17 voted against Earth's membership. The Council has decided, announced the leader. Earth's application for full membership is denied. The chamber erupted in murmurs and movement as John stood stunned in the center. Olivia stepped up beside him, her face pale but composed. What does this mean for Earth? John finally asked. The six-eyed Vexillarian spoke again. Humanity will be granted observer status only. You are forbidden from colonizing beyond your solar system. You are restricted from accessing advanced technologies. You are excluded from galactic trade networks. You may send representatives to council meetings but will have no vote. That's containment, not cooperation, Olivia said quietly, but her voice carried in the chamber. It is protection, corrected another council member, for both humanity and the galactic community. Perhaps in another few centuries your application can be reconsidered. John stepped forward again. Honorable Council, I urge you to reconsider. Humanity has much to offer. We are young, yes, but we are also adaptable, creative, and determined. We seek not to disrupt, but to contribute. The decision is final, said the crystal being. This session is concluded. The Earth delegation was escorted back to their ship in silence. Once aboard, the team sat in the conference room, the weight of rejection heavy in the air. What do we tell Earth? Asked one of the junior diplomats. John looked around at the disappointed faces. We tell them the truth. The Council has rejected us. They think they've contained us to our solar system while they decide if we're worthy. Olivia, who had been quiet since they left the council chamber, suddenly laughed. Everyone turned to look at her in surprise. Sorry, she said, not looking. Sorry at all. I was just thinking about human history. Has anyone ever successfully told humans they couldn't go somewhere or do something? A slow smile spread across John's face as he understood what she was saying. They think they've contained us, Olivia continued, her eyes bright with something that looked like mischief. They have no idea what humans do when backed into a corner. John nodded, a new determination replacing his disappointment. They've shown us the door. Fine, we'll find another way in. As the Pioneer pulled away from Centauri Prime, the Earth delegation was already making plans. The Council had made their decision, but they had seriously underestimated the species. They had just rejected. Humans didn't take no for an answer, especially from those who thought themselves superior. The journey back to Earth would take weeks, but that was fine. They had a lot of planning to do. 5 years passed since the Council rejection. Earth governments united as never before, driven by a common purpose. If the galaxy would not welcome humans, then humans would find their own path. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, in a facility, hidden from orbital scans, Dr. Nathan Russell worked with a team of brilliant scientists. Their official mission was to improve faster-than-light travel within Council restrictions. Their real goal was much more ambitious. Nathan ran his hand through his messy brown hair as he stared at the screen showing the latest test results. The numbers made no sense, but that was what made them so interesting. He had been awake for nearly 30 hours straight, fueled by coffee and determination. Kelly, can you look at these readings? He called across the lab. Kelly Martinez looked up from her own workstation. She had been with the project from the beginning, an engineer with an intuitive understanding of quantum mechanics that sometimes made Nathan jealous. She walked over, her lab coat swinging around her legs. That can't be right, she said, leaning closer to the screen. Run it again. Nathan ran the test again. The same impossible numbers appeared. I've run it 5 times now. Something is happening that we don't understand. Paul Harris joined them, bringing fresh coffee for everyone. What are we looking at? The test probe disappeared for 3.7 seconds. Kelly explained. But it didn't go where we expected. It wasn't in normal space at all. The 3 scientists looked at each other as the implications sank in. Their test probe, designed to find new methods of faster-than-light travel, had slipped into something else entirely. Not hyperspace as the Council races used, but something different, something unknown. Weeks turned into months as the team worked to understand what they had discovered. They built better probes, refined their equations, and gradually pieced together the truth. There was another dimension, parallel to normal space, but distinct from the hyperspace the Council used for travel. Nathan called it gray space because it existed in the gray area between dimensions. The Council races don't know about this, Paul said during one late-night discussion. Their technology all uses hyperspace principles. We've checked every bit of data from the observer missions. Kelly nodded, excitement making her eyes bright, which means they can't monitor it either. Their detection systems wouldn't see a ship traveling through gray space. Nathan thought about what that meant. We could bypass their blockades, establish colonies without them knowing, explore the galaxy on our terms. The team worked in secret for another month, refining their discovery and building a prototype engine that could move a small craft through gray space. When they were finally ready, Nathan sent a message to Earth Government Headquarters: breakthrough achieved. Request audience with leadership. 2 days later, Admiral Lisa Bennett arrived at the facility. She was a tall woman with short gray hair and the confident bearing of someone used to command. Nathan had never met her before, but her reputation was legendary. She had been one of the strongest voices for continuing space exploration despite Council restrictions. "Show me," was all she said after the initial greetings. The team took her to the test chamber where their prototype sat ready. It wasn't much to look at, just a sphere about 3 meters across with the new drive system inside. Paul operated the controls while Nathan and Kelly explained the theory. "The Council gave us a seat at the kids' table," Admiral Bennett said as she watched the prototype disappear and reappear. "But they never bothered to check if we found another door to the dining room." Within days, the highest levels of Earth leadership had been briefed. Within weeks, resources began pouring into what was now called Operation Backdoor. The plan was audacious. Humans would explore and colonize the galaxy in absolute secrecy, using their discovery to bypass Council restrictions completely. Nathan, Kelly, and Paul found themselves heading a rapidly expanding research division. New facilities were built, hidden from Council observers. The best minds on Earth were recruited. Progress accelerated beyond what any of them had thought possible. "It's like the whole species was just waiting for this chance," Kelly commented. One day as they toured a new manufacturing plant built inside an asteroid. "Everyone's working together now," Nathan nodded. "Nothing unites humans like a common adversary." The first full-sized ship equipped with a gray space drive was completed 18 months after the initial discovery. It was named Pathfinder, a sleek vessel designed specifically for exploration. Its captain, Steve Rogers, was a veteran pilot with a calm demeanor and steady hands. "She's beautiful," Steve said when he first saw his new command. "How far can she go?" "Theoretically, anywhere in the galaxy," Nathan told him. "Gray space doesn't have the same limitations as hyperspace. Distance matters less than the precision of your entry and exit points." The Pathfinder's mission was simple but crucial: explore beyond the solar system, map safe routes through gray space, and identify potential colony worlds, all while remaining completely undetected by Council observers. On launch day, Nathan, Kelly, and Paul watched from the control room as the Pathfinder prepared for its first jump. Admiral Bennett stood beside them, her face showing nothing, but her posture tense with anticipation. "Pathfinder to control," Steve's voice came through clearly. "All systems green. Ready for gray space transition on your mark?" "You realize this changes everything," Paul said quietly. "If this works, the Council's restrictions become meaningless." Admiral Bennett's lips curved in a slight smile. "That's the idea, Dr. Harris." "Pathfinder, you are clear for transition," Nathan spoke into the microphone. "Godspeed." On the main screen, they watched as the Pathfinder seemed to blur around the edges. Then between one heartbeat and the next, it was gone. Not with the flashy energy signature of a hyperspace jump that Council technology could track, but with a subtle ripple that faded almost instantly. For 30 seconds, the control room was completely silent. Then the communication system chimed. Control! This is Pathfinder. Steve's voice was steady, but they could hear the excitement underneath. Gray space transition successful. We are approximately 1 light-year from Sol, exactly on target. No signs of council activity. The view out here is spectacular. Cheers erupted throughout the control room. People hugged and high-fived. Some even cried. Nathan found himself being embraced by Kelly while Paul clapped him on the back. Admiral Bennett waited until the celebration quieted somewhat. Ladies and gentlemen, this is just the beginning. The Council thought they could contain humanity to our solar system. They're about to learn how wrong they were. As the Pathfinder continued its mission, more ships were already under construction. Earth was going to claim its place among the stars, with or without the Council's permission. The table was about to get much bigger. The stars looked different from the surface of Nova Terra. Commander, Steve Rogers stood on a rocky outcrop watching the sun set on humanity's first major colony world. 10 years had passed since the Pathfinder's first gray space jump, and everything had changed. What had begun as a simple exploration mission had evolved into the greatest expansion in human history, all conducted in perfect secrecy. "Beautiful evening," said a voice behind him. Maria Gonzalez climbed up to join him, her boots kicking up the reddish dust that covered much of Nova Terra's surface. Steve nodded. Hard to believe this was just an empty planet on a star chart. A few years ago, below them the colony sprawled across the valley. Most of it was underground, hidden from orbital scans, but the greenhouse domes glittered in the fading light. Nearly 5,000 people now called Nova Terra home, with more arriving every month. And this was just one of 27 major human settlements spread across the galaxy. The latest harvest numbers look good, Maria told him. As agricultural director, she was responsible for making sure the colony could feed itself. We should have a surplus this season. Good, the outpost on Demeter could use extra supplies. Their soil bacteria project hit some setbacks. A child's laughter drifted up from the colony, followed by several more young voices. The first generation of humans born outside the solar system was growing up never having seen Earth. To them, planets circling distant stars were home. Council observers still have no idea? Maria asked, though she already knew the answer. Steve shook his head. None. Their patrol ships stick to hyperspace lanes and monitor the borders of our solar system. Meanwhile, we slip past them through gray space like ghosts. The cum unit on Steve's wrist beeped. Rogers here, he answered. Commander, the Horizon has just arrived, reported the colony's communication officer. Captain Miller reports successful. First contact with the Nix in the Rigel system. I'll be right there, Steve replied, already heading back down the path with Maria beside him. The command center was built into the side of a mountain, its entrance disguised as a natural cave. Inside, however, it was a hub of advanced technology. The gray space communication array allowed instant contact with Earth and all human settlements, completely undetectable by Council technology. Greg Miller's face appeared on the main screen as Steve entered, the captain of the exploration vessel. Horizon looked tired but excited. Commander Rogers, Director Gonzalez. The mission was a complete success. The Nix are extremely interested in an alliance. Tell me about them, Steve said, taking a seat at the conference table. They're a shadow-dwelling species with remarkable biological technology. The Council rejected their membership application 80 years ago, claiming their physiology was too divergent for proper integration. Since then, they've been developing their civilization in isolation, just like we've been doing. This was a pattern they had discovered repeatedly over the past decade. The Galactic Council was far more exclusive than they had initially realized. Dozens of species had been rejected or simply ignored, deemed unworthy of membership for arbitrary reasons. Are they willing to share their biological technology? Maria asked. Greg nodded. Very willing, especially in exchange for our gray space drive technology. Their ambassador said something I think you should hear, Commander. He said, We have watched the Council's arrogance grow for centuries. Perhaps humans are the catalyst for change this galaxy needs. Steve felt a chill run down his spine. What had begun as a way to bypass council restrictions was becoming something much larger. "The Knicks make 9, he said quietly. "9 what?" asked a young officer who had recently arrived from Earth. 9 non-council species we've made alliances with, Maria explained. The Knicks, the Volari, the Sentinel Mines, the Drov, the Fedon Collective, the Ixian Mesh, the Krell, the Tau, and the Meridian Wanderers. Greg's image flickered slightly as he leaned forward. And none of them detected by council surveillance. We're building an alternative galactic network right under their noses. Later that evening, Steve joined a subspace conference call with Earth leadership. Admiral Bennett, now with more gray in her hair but the same determined expression, led the meeting from her office in the underground command center beneath Geneva. "The Knicks alliance is excellent news," she said after hearing Steve's report. "Their biological technology will be particularly valuable for our terraforming projects." Dr. Alan Shepard, who had taken over the scientific division after Nathan Russell's retirement, spoke next. "The combined knowledge of all our allied species is beginning to exceed council technology in several areas. The Krell energy systems integrated with our gray space drive have increased efficiency by 300%. "And what about the Earth delegation to the council?" Steve asked. "Any suspicions?" John Carter's aged face appeared on another screen. Though officially retired, he still advised the current Earth representatives to the Galactic Council. "None. Our diplomats attend meetings, express appropriate disappointment at our continued restrictions, and return home. Meanwhile, Council attention has shifted to a territorial dispute between 2 of their member races. They barely notice us anymore." "Perfect," Admiral Bennett said with a slight smile. "That's exactly how we want it." The meeting continued as they discussed expansion plans, resource allocation, and defense strategies. The human colonies were peaceful, but not naive. Each settlement maintained a small but well-equipped security force, and a fleet of gray space-capable ships stood ready to respond to any threat. When the meeting ended, Steve walked through the underground corridors of Nova Terra's main hub. He passed hydroponics labs where scientists were adapting Earth plants to the local soil. He nodded to engineers working on new habitat designs. He watched children in a classroom learning about both Earth history and their new homeworld. "We're building something extraordinary here," Maria had told those children just yesterday. "A human civilization beyond Earth, beyond the Council's knowledge or control," she was right. But it was more than just human civilization now. It was an alliance of excluded species, each bringing their own strengths and perspectives. Together, they were creating an alternative to the Council's vision of galactic order. Back in his office, Steve studied the latest gray space navigation charts. Human exploration ships had now mapped nearly 20% of the galaxy, discovering resources, habitable worlds, and new life forms that the Council had never bothered to find. A message from Earth popped up on his screen. The latest census numbers showed that nearly 2 million humans now lived on colony worlds, with another 3 million in space habitats throughout Council-ignored regions of space. Earth itself maintained the facade of a species contained to its solar system, with official ships carefully following Council restrictions whenever they were being observed. Steve remembered something John Carter had said years ago when the first colony ships were being prepared. "They gave us a seat at the kids' table, so we're building our own table." The metaphor had evolved as their situation changed. Now it felt more accurate to say that while the Council thought they owned the table, humanity and its allies were claiming the entire room. As the twin moons of Nova Terra rose outside his window, Steve wondered how long they could maintain the deception. Not forever, certainly. Sooner or later, the Council would discover what humanity had been doing. When that day came, the galaxy would change forever. Steve just hoped they would be ready. Captain Gregory Miller of the colony ship Horizon checked the navigation readings for the 3rd time. The Horizon was transporting 200 settlers and supplies to the outer colony on Demeter, traveling through normal space for the final approach after exiting gray space at a safe distance. Everything looked normal until proximity alarms suddenly blared throughout the bridge. "Report," Greg ordered, his voice calm despite the unexpected alert. His navigation officer looked up with wide eyes. "Sir, a ship just emerged from hyperspace. Almost on top of us, Council Registry. It's a Tellarite science vessel." For a moment, the bridge was completely silent. In 17 years of secret expansion, this was the moment they had both prepared for and dreaded. Direct contact with a Council ship outside the solar system, where no human vessel was supposed to be. "Open a channel," Greg decided after a brief hesitation and alert command. The view screen flickered to life, showing the interior of the Tellarite vessel. The aliens resembled upright bears with tusks and complex breathing apparatus. Their captain stared at the humans with what appeared to be shock. "This is Captain Gregory Miller of the Earth colony ship Horizon," Greg said, keeping his voice steady. "We mean you no harm." The Tellarite captain made a series of clicking sounds before speaking in the common galactic language. "Human vessel. You are in violation of Council restrictions. Explain your presence in this sector." Greg took a deep breath and made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. "Perhaps it would be easier if I showed you. With your permission, I invite you to dock with us for direct communication." As the Tellarite vessel maneuvered to dock with the Horizon, Greg sent an encoded message to Earth Command. "First contact with Council vessel established. Tellarite science ship, I've invited them aboard. We have nothing to hide anymore. It's time they learned what we've accomplished." The response came back almost immediately. "Understood. Diplomatic protocol authorized. Full disclosure at your discretion. Reinforcements standing by if needed." Greg met the Tellarite delegation at the airlock. There were 5 of them, each carrying scientific equipment but no visible weapons. Their captain introduced himself as Grell. "Welcome aboard the Horizon," Greg said. "I believe you have questions." "Many," Grell replied, looking around with obvious curiosity. "Beginning with how a human colony ship came to be 20 light-years from your solar system when the Council explicitly forbade such expansion." Instead of answering directly, Greg gestured for them to follow. "Let me show you something." He led them to the ship's observation deck, where a large display showed the colony network. Points of light represented human settlements and allied species territories spread across a significant portion of the galaxy. "What is this?" Grell asked, his small eyes widening further. "The truth," Greg answered simply. 17 years ago, your Council showed humanity the door. You contained us to our solar system, denied us resources, technology, and a voice, so we found another way." He explained gray space technology, watching as the Tellarite scientists exchanged glances and muttered to each other in their own language. He told them about the colonies, the alliances with other rejected species, and the parallel galactic network humans had been building. "Impossible," one of the scientists insisted. "Our sensors would have detected such expansion." Greg smiled. "Slightly. Your sensors are designed to monitor hyperspace travel. Gray space exists in a different dimension entirely. We've been passing your patrols like ghosts for nearly 2 decades. The Tellarites insisted on scanning the ship, examining the gray space drive, and questioning the human crew. Greg allowed it all. The time for secrecy was over. "You realize I must report this to the Council," Grell said after several hours. Greg nodded. "We expected as much. All I ask is that you report accurately what you've seen. We are not a threat to the Council. We simply refuse to be contained." Within days, the news spread throughout Council space. Emergency sessions were called. The Horizon continued its journey to Demeter, now accompanied by 3 Council observer ships that had rushed to the scene. Meanwhile, Earth's official representatives prepared for what would surely be a confrontational meeting. John Carter, despite his advanced age, insisted on attending. "I was there when they rejected us," he told the current diplomatic team. "I should be there when they learn how wrong they were." The council chamber looked much the same as it had 17 years earlier when John had first stood before them. The same 17 platforms for the member races, though some of the representatives had changed. The same sense of superiority, radiating from most of them, but this time was different. This time, screens around the chamber displayed images captured by the Tellurite science vessel. Images of vast human settlements on worlds thought uninhabitable, advanced technologies the Council had never seen. Evidence of alliances with species the Council had marginalized. The Vexillarian delegate, still in the same position after all these years, was the first to speak. His 6 eyes blinked in rare unison, a sign of extreme agitation. "Explain these violations immediately," he demanded, threats spilling from all 6 of his mouthparts. "By what right do humans expand beyond the restrictions placed upon them? By what authority do you establish colonies across Council space?" John Carter stood before them, his back straight despite his years. His hair had gone white, his face lined with age, but his eyes were as sharp as ever. 17 years ago you showed us the door," he replied calmly, "so we built our own house. You denied us a voice at your table, so we created our own network. Of cooperation and mutual benefit with others you deemed unworthy." Murmurs spread through the chamber as John activated a holographic display showing the true extent of human expansion and alliance building. The display was far more detailed than what the Tellurites had discovered, showing not just human colonies but the territories of all their allied species. Humanity now has diplomatic and trade relationships with 23 non-council species. John continued. "We've established colonies in 32 star systems. We've developed technologies that, quite frankly, surpass many of your own." The council chamber erupted in chaos. Some representatives demanded immediate military action to bring humans back under control. Others called for negotiations, recognizing the changed balance of power. A few sat in stunned silence, struggling to comprehend how they had missed such massive expansion. "You have deceived the council," accused the crystal being who led the session. John shook his head. "We simply found a path you didn't know existed. You gave us no choice." For hours, the debate raged. Reports continued to come in as council ships throughout the galaxy encountered evidence of human activity and the alliance network they had built. The sheer scale of what humanity had accomplished in secret became increasingly clear. Finally, the council leader called for order. "This matter requires further investigation and consideration. The council will recess for 6 standard days. During this time, no action is to be taken against human settlements or their allies. When we reconvene, we will determine our response to this unprecedented situation." As John left the chamber with the Earth delegation, he felt a strange mix of satisfaction and apprehension. The Council had been forced to acknowledge humanity's achievement, but what would come next was impossible to predict. Would there be conflict, negotiation, some attempt to reassert control? Whatever happened, one thing was certain. The galaxy would never be the same again. 6 months after the revelation, representatives from across the galaxy gathered on Nova Terra. The massive dome of the newly constructed assembly hall gleamed in the morning sunlight. Inside, delegates from both council and non-council species prepared for the opening of what was being called the Galactic Summit. It was the first such meeting ever held outside council space, and the first to include so many different species. Admiral Lisa Bennett stood at the entrance, watching as the various delegations arrived. Now, in her 70s, she had become Earth's primary diplomat for this historic occasion. Beside her stood representatives from the 9 major allied species. That had formed the core of humanity's alternative network. "They all came," said the Nix ambassador, his shadowy form shifting slightly in the light. "Even the most stubborn council races," Lisa nodded. "They had little choice. The balance of power has shifted too much to ignore. The last 6 months had been tense. After the initial council meeting where humanity's expansion was revealed, there had been threats of sanctions, military action, and economic isolation. But as more details emerged about the extent of the human alliance network, those threats had gradually been replaced by offers of negotiation. Several council races, impressed by human ingenuity and diplomatic skill, had broken ranks with the more hardline members. The Tellurites, whose science vessel had made the initial discovery, had been particularly vocal in advocating for a new relationship with humans and their allies. Now representatives from 42 species sat in the circular chamber, each at their own section of a massive round table. The symbolism was not lost on anyone present. Unlike the hierarchical arrangement of the council chamber, with its elevated platforms for member races, this table put everyone on equal footing. Lisa took her place at the Earth section as the final delegates settled in. The low hum of conversation, translation devices, and environmental systems filled the room. She activated the central podium and the chamber quieted. Representatives of the galaxy, I welcome you to Nova Terra, she began. For too long, the galaxy has been divided between those deemed worthy of a voice and those silenced. Today we propose a new structure, not a council that excludes, but a galactic union that embraces diversity and cooperation. Her words were translated simultaneously into dozens of languages. On screens around the chamber, the proposed structure of the new galactic union was displayed. It would be based on proportional representation rather than the all-or-nothing membership of the council. Species would have voting rights proportional to their population and territory, with protections for younger civilizations. Ridiculous, declared the Vexillarian representative, rising from his seat. The council has maintained galactic order for millennia. Why should we abandon a system that has served us well for so long? Has it served everyone well? Asked the Krell delegate, her metallic voice resonating through the chamber. Or just the 17 species granted membership? The debate that followed was passionate and occasionally heated. The older council races fought to maintain their privileges, while the formerly excluded species pushed for greater equality. Earth representatives, along with their closest allies, served as mediators, guiding the discussion toward compromise. During a brief recess, Lisa found herself standing next to the Medusan delegate, whose floating form pulsed with colored lights. That indicated deep thought. Your species has accomplished something remarkable, the Medusan said unexpectedly. When we voted to contain humanity to your solar system, I truly believed it was for the best. I see now how wrong we were. It's not about who was right or wrong, Lisa replied. It's about finding a better way forward. The galaxy is vast enough for all of us to thrive together. As the summit continued over several days, positions gradually shifted. Several council species, after visiting human colonies and allied worlds, were impressed by what they saw. The technologies developed by the combined expertise of the Alliance Network exceeded council standards in many areas. The gray space drive alone represented a leap forward that could benefit all spacefaring races. The Nix representative addressed the assembly during a critical voting session. The humans accomplished in 2 decades what many of us couldn't in centuries. Not through conquest or intimidation, but through cooperation and mutual respect. Their approach offers a model for all of us. Even some of the most resistant council races began to see the advantages of the proposed union structure. Access to gray space technology and the resources of previously unexplored regions of the galaxy provided powerful incentives. On the final day of the summit, the vote was held. The result was decisive. The council structure would be dissolved, replaced by the more inclusive Galactic Union with proportional representation and protections for younger civilizations. A transitional period of 5 years would allow for smooth implementation of the new system. As delegates began to depart, many stopping to continue discussions or form new connections, Lisa found herself standing with John Carter and Olivia Wright. All 3 had been present at the original council rejection 17 years earlier. Now they watched as representatives of 42 species mingled freely in the Great Hall of Nova Terra. Remember when they showed us the door? Olivia asked. With a smile, her once dark hair now white, but her eyes still sharp. John nodded, watching as a human child played with the offspring of a Nix diplomat. The next generation would grow up in a very different galaxy than the one he had first encountered. They gave us a seat at their table, so we built a bigger table. No, Olivia corrected, looking out through the dome of the Nova Terra Assembly Hall at the stars beyond. We built a better one. Later that evening, after most of the delegates had departed, Lisa walked alone through the colony that had grown from a small settlement to the symbolic center of a new galactic order. Lights from homes and businesses glowed warmly in the twilight. People from a dozen different species moved through the streets, talking, trading, learning from each other. She thought about the long journey that had brought them here. The rejection that had fueled determination rather than defeat. The discovery that had opened new paths. The silent expansion that had rewritten the rules. And finally the revelation. That had forced the galaxy to change. Earth had been shut out by the Council, denied a place at their table. So humanity had claimed the whole table, not for themselves alone, but for all who wished to join them as equals. It was not the end of their story, but the beginning of something far greater than anyone could have imagined when that first diplomatic mission had departed Earth with such high hopes. As the stars appeared in the darkening sky above Nova Terra, Lisa Bennett smiled. The galaxy was wide open now, and the future with it.